Hey guys, just a quick video I wanted to make today, just to let you guys know that the Angry Video Game Nerd movie is now available to watch on demand. I'll put a link in the description down below where you can find it if you want to watch it for yourself. You will have to pay, unfortunately. It's not available to watch for free, but you can go and watch it there if you really want to anyway. I also wanted to just share with you my basic thoughts on what I thought of the film, because I've seen it 3 times now. And yeah, it's a difficult kind of film to get a handle on and really know exactly what to think of because, for one thing, you have to take into account that this is a very sort of low budget kind of film. I mean, people have been sort of saying, $300,000 or something like that, and any kind of average Joe person like me, it's more money than they could ever dream of having in a lifetime. But for a movie budget, it's tiny amount of money. You think of like a low budget movie like Slumdog Millionaire. That's $15 million. The budget for that movie. This is less than $500,000. So it's a tiny amount for a amount of money to spend on a movie. So with that in mind, obviously with it being an independent film, and also with the fact that I think part of the intention behind it was to make it kind of look like a sort of cheesy, low budget kind of film with old-fashioned kind of effects. I think on that level, it's pretty entertaining. The effects, they're designed to look fake, and they do look fake, but there is a nice kind of little bit of a charm to them, it is kind of cool to look at them and just sort of think about, the effort that was put into making them. And, even though they don't look real, you can tell a lot of effort went into the models that were made up for them, the miniatures that they had to design, it all had to sort of look like the real things that they were supposed to be, and it is kind of impressive what has been done on such a low budget, even though, it doesn't look real and it's not supposed to look real. But at the same time, I kind of sort of get the feeling like James has sort of thought to himself, I'm going to pay homage to these kinds of films and that kind of film, and I'm going to have this kind of effect here and that kind of effect here. And a lot of it has been put into the film, and then the idea of actually sort of making this into a good story has sort of been thrown aside for the sake of just having certain effects in there and having homages to certain things and having references to certain things in there. I get the feeling like he's wanted to put all this stuff that he wants to do in the film and not really sort of thought how it's going to actually fit into the story of the film. And, much like I would say kind of like Phantom Menace, it's sort of crammed full with a lot of stuff that from a narrative standpoint, from a story perspective, isn't really necessary. There's a lot of shots actually in this film where I'm sort of thinking to myself, they didn't really need quite so long on that, or they didn't need that shot in there, but I can tell why he's put it in there. It's so he can do that particular effect or pay that little sort of homage thing. In fact, there's quite a long sort of, I think, dream sequence in this that pays homage to various different types of films, and it doesn't add anything to the story whatsoever. He's just put it in there so that he can pay homage to that type of film. So from a story perspective, and of course the argument people keep making about it's a low budget film, try and keep that in mind. That's no excuse for a poor screenplay and a poor story. You can have millions and millions of dollars and have a crap screenplay, and you can have no money at all and have an amazing screenplay, and vice versa as well. So the fact that maybe the story isn't particularly solid, the low budget is not an excuse for that. And the story is somewhat entertaining. There isn't as much of a comedic kind of level to it as I was expecting really there to be. I was expecting kind of sort of road trip, Dumber and Dumber type format to it, with with a few sort of bizarre film homages inserted in there, and it's somewhat entertaining, but there is much less of a comedic value, I think, to the film than I was expecting. He has 2 companions that sort of go along with him, neither of which I found particularly engaging, and where they actually end up at the end of the film, I won't say exactly what happens, but I didn't buy into it at all. Obviously there's a big sort of focus on the E.T. review that everyone has wanted to do, and it's quite obvious. I think the reason why he has held off on reviewing E.T. for this long is because he wanted to make this movie so that he could review it in that. He does review E.T. in this film, by the way. You can rest assured that long-awaited review does happen in this film. But I was kind of sort of maybe thinking it was going to be a lot of sort of Angry Nerd reviewing going on, as the story of the film was progressing, kind of like the Bugs Bunny videos that he did. It was a review, then it was a little bit of a action sequences, fight scenes, and everything, and then another review, or a bit more of the review, and then more action. And I thought it was going to be kind of like that, but it's not really. It's all sort of story, and then there's the ET review like right at the end, basically. So I suppose from that perspective, it's kind of disappointing, really. I mean, it's all sort of very entertaining from seeing the good effects, seeing the homages and everything, but it's perhaps not as entertaining after 2 hours of that kind of stuff. The charm maybe wears off a little bit, and the narrative and the jokes in it aren't quite as interesting as I was expecting them to be. The cast actually is a lot better than I was expecting. I knew James obviously was going to be absolutely perfect as the nerd, but the rest of the cast actually was quite good as well, I thought. They had a lot of good actors, and there was nobody in there that I thought to myself, God, they can't act. The acting's acceptable enough. It's the story, I think, is where this film maybe falls apart a little bit. But I think, the charm of it, and it being the nerd, and just the sort of idea that the character of the nerd can exist in the real world, just living out a normal life, I think that keeps it entertaining enough. So, it's no masterpiece, but I think if you're a fan of the nerd, it will keep you entertained enough. One last thing I want to talk about before I finish here is a question people have been asking is, is it worth the year and a half or so that we went without Angry Nerd episodes to make this movie? People are sort of bitter about the fact that he took like a year off not making any nerd episodes so that he could work on this movie, and people sort of think this isn't right, like he should have been making nerd episodes. This movie isn't worth it or something. And three things I would sort of have to say about that is, first of all, get over it. Your life does not depend on there being constant new nerd episodes coming out every week or every month or everything. Find something else to do with your life. You can get by without a little bit of nerd for a bit. The second thing I would say is, I don't think it should be important how often he puts nerd episodes out, or how many nerd episodes there are. I think it should be more a question of, are they any good? How can you be sure that any hypothetical nerd episodes you could have made, had you not been working on the movie, would have been any good? And the third thing is that this kind of argument of, we missed out on a year of nerd episodes because he was working on this movie, that assumes that these nerd episodes he could have made while he was working on the movie will never get made. And I don't see why that would be the case. I think, whatever nerd episodes he could have made had he not been working on the movie, he will just simply make now. So I don't think we're losing out on anything by him making this movie. We just have to wait slightly longer for him to make new episodes. So, no, I don't really understand what people are making such a fuss about the fact that he was taking a year off working on the film. Is the film worth it, though, for all the time we were waiting? It kind of is, and it kind of isn't. There's a lot of interesting and entertaining stuff in it. But from a story perspective, it perhaps isn't as spectacular as you maybe are sort of used to from the nerd. And there's a lot less comedy than I was expecting, actually. I was disappointed with it on that grounds, actually. So yeah, slightly below what I was expecting the standard of it to be. I wasn't expecting anything spectacular, and it's actually not quite fulfilled it, but it's decent enough. I'm certainly not disappointed, and I feel fairly satisfied that I've seen it and everything. So yeah, probably won't buy the DVD. I don't think it's quite good enough for that, but probably is worth seeing if you like the nerd at all. Okay, that's that, guys. See you soon. Bye.